Welcome to Focus on the Future. The fastest growing crime in America today is identity theft. There are many different methods used by ID thieves to empty your bank accounts, steal your credit or debit card numbers, or use your social security number to secure illegal employment or commit crimes that cannot be traced back to the perpetrators but can put you in legal jeopardy. There are services available that will alert you to an ID theft problem, but there is nothing that can absolutely prevent it happening to you. So today, we're going to explore what you must do if you fall victim to identity theft. We're joined today by our guest, Ann Wallace, of an organization called ITAC, I-T-A-C, who is an expert in the field of solving the issue of ID theft after the fact. Welcome to Focus on the Future, Ann. Great to have you here this morning.
Great to be here.
Tell us just a little bit about yourself, please.
Well, sure. I am president of ITAC, which stands for the Identity Theft Assistance Center.
Okay.
And we're a nonprofit sponsored by the financial services industry, large financial services companies who believe that consumers need to know more about how to prevent identity theft and how to recover from identity theft. So that's our mission.
So talk a little bit then about that mission and the purpose of the organization itself. Give us an outline of exactly what ITAC does.
Sure. We actually do three things. The first and probably the most important thing is we help consumers recover from identity fraud. So we can talk about how ITAC, that victim assistance service works, if you like, in more detail.
I would like to do that as we move on, sure.
The other big part of our mission is consumer education, which is why I was so glad to have a chance to be here today, because we spend a lot of our time helping people understand what they can do to protect themselves, and if they do have a problem, how to fix it, how to recover.
Gotcha.
The third part of our mission is a little different. It's working with law enforcement. Our companies normally work with law enforcement, to solve fraud issues, but they believed that by getting together, by working collaboratively, they could do more as a group than they could individually. So ITAC is a way to collect information about identity theft crime, and we actually share data with law enforcement. We share data with the Federal Trade Commission and the FBI and the United States Postal Inspection Service, so they can do a better job catching the bad guys.
I see. So then when one of your clients, if you will, experiences a situation with ID theft, normally they would file their own police report, correct?
Right, and we encourage consumers to do that.
Right.
Anyway.
Okay.
But the beauty of ITAC is that we have information about a large number of consumers, and so instead of just individual cases that might be reported to a police department here or a police department there, we can collect all this data and feed it to federal law enforcement as well as state law enforcement agencies.
So perhaps then the law enforcement can see some kind of a trend developing?
Exactly.
Or
they may see connections between these individual crimes. And the other thing that's really important is that in sentencing identity theft crimes, if the prosecutor can show multiple instances, multiple victims, then the perpetrator will go away for a longer period of time.
And what do you suppose the most common form of ID theft, or is there a common form of ID theft?
There really is no one flavor of identity theft. It comes in a wide variety of flavors. People are very concerned about the internet, and they should be, and we can talk more about that.
Right.
But there's also the real world, the bricks and mortar experience of identity theft. And there's the identity fraud that can happen with friends and family.
Yeah, we don't think about that very much, do we?
No, we don't. So whether it's the boyfriend, girlfriend, roommate, even members of your family who have access to information. We see a lot of very sad cases about an older person being victimized by, say, a grandson, or cases like that.
That's a sad case.
They are, and they're sometimes hard to detect, and people don't like to report them.
You know, it's interesting that you bring that up, because this time of the year, a lot of people are starting college. A lot of our students that watch this program are going on to college. And we don't start to think that perhaps some of the sensitive information that we have available in our dorm rooms or sitting around our apartment, whatever, that other people might actually look at. You and I were talking off camera earlier, and you mentioned to me people like to trust other people. And I think that's true, and especially in a roommate situation. Gosh, why would you not trust your own roommate? But probably pretty common that.
Exactly. We like to be trusting. We like to believe the best of our fellow human beings. But the fact is that temptation arises. And, you know, if somebody needs an extra $100 and your debit card is there and they have access to your PIN, you might be a victim of fraud. And it can get more serious, where your social security number or other crucial pieces of information are compromised.
Well, you also mentioned that the internet and there are fears from that. I would imagine that because of the internet and social networking, et cetera, that there's a lot of possibilities that are perhaps emerging that we haven't even discovered yet that young people should be aware of. Can you talk about any of those?
We see cases where people post information about, I'm going on a trip, I'm going to be out of town, the name of my dog, the name of my mother, things that seem innocent.
Sure.
But then you realize that those facts, like your mother's maiden name, my dog's name, maybe your passcode, maybe your secret, the answer to your secret question. And so people really should be, young people particularly, should be aware of how that information can be misused.
Yeah, the other day we were talking in a different venue about Wi-Fi hotspots, for example. And you're sitting in a coffee shop someplace and you sign on and you're on your social network. People don't stop to realize that those things are pretty much open connections. They're not encrypted. They're not safely locked. Would you warn people about interacting in that kind of environment, especially in the social networking area?
Wi-Fi can be compromised. The same goes for mobile banking. Again, we're all really attached to our iPhones and so forth, and a lot of us are doing banking on our iPhones, and so we should have a password protecting your iPhone.
Well, yeah, but especially if you're in a Wi-Fi hotspot, for crying out loud. You're doing banking while you're doing that? I don't know if that makes any sense. That seemed to be pretty darn risky to me.
Yeah.
Given the fact that you can go through steps to prevent your own ID from being stolen, like don't carry your social security card and those kind of things that we've all heard about, there are protection services. One that comes to mind is Identity Guard. Are services like that appropriate for young people, do you think?
Well, they are, but before we talk about the commercial services, I want to spend a minute talking about what people can do for free.
Oh, good.
What you can do by yourself and you don't need a service to do. And the first thing is that federal law gives consumers the right to see their credit report. So you don't have to pay for it. You can go online to annualcreditreport.org, which is the Federal Trade Commission site. Don't be tricked into paying for this.
Annualcreditreport.org.
Right.
Okay.
And you can see your credit report. And that is a great place to start, because you may find that there's something on your credit report you didn't know about. That somebody may have opened an account in your name or run up a balance way over what you thought it was. So that's something you can do for yourself for free. The other thing that you can do for free is check your balances. I mean, it sounds so basic, but now that we have internet access to your checking account balances, you can go or do it at the ATM and see, well, are there transactions I don't recognize?
Right.
So it's the early detection. And the reason that's so important is the sooner you find the problem, the sooner you can fix it.
Yeah, because there are some limitations in terms of how much money is at risk if you don't report something stolen, like your debit card. Is it 30 days before you, or is it shorter than that?
Right, there are limits on the fraud, on recovery for when you've been a victim of fraud. But even more important is the fact that we find that young people tend to be victims longer than some other age groups.
Explain why.
Well, because they may not be looking at their balances. And so if you check your balance on a regular basis, at least once a week, you're much less likely to be a victim on a long-term basis.
Now, young people under the age of 17 or 18 won't have any kind of credit report at all. They won't be able to find anything, will they?
Well, that's true.
So we're talking about people 18 and
18
plus.
and over,
okay.
Right.
I'm kind of curious. I wonder how many students listening to this that are 18 have actually pulled up their credit report and taken a look at it. But you say they can do that, and that website again is?
Annualcreditreport.org.
Terrific.
And it's a great place to start.
Yeah, I think so. I think that makes a lot of sense. Coming back to these services that you can buy to protect yourself, what do they actually do for people?
Well, they do a lot of the same things that you can do for yourself. The truth is that we don't always do what we should be doing.
Right.
So if, it's a matter of convenience and a matter of just doing it on a regular basis, the services ensure that they will constantly monitor your credit report. And so if new accounts are opened, you'll get a notice. And you'll have an opportunity to say, yes, that's me, or no, that's not me.
Well, that's the one thing that I've noticed, because I do subscribe to a service, and it made sense to me. And any time that somebody has made an inquiry into my credit, whether I've initiated it or someone else has, and in a couple of cases someone else has, I was alerted within hours, I think, of that transaction being made. And it really was a comfort to me to realize that somebody was looking over my shoulder, kind of.
Yeah, that is a great feature.
I think so. Let's take it a step further now, and let's assume that someone has been compromised, that her ID has been stolen for whatever, and enters then ITAC. Do I have to be a member of a certain class or organization in order to reach your organization?
You have to be a customer of one of our member companies.
Okay.
And you can find the list of member companies on our website.
And what's the website address?
It's identitytheftassistance.org.
You thought I'd never ask, huh?
I wanted to get that in there.
Say it again.
Identitytheftassistance.org. And it's some of the big names. It's Bank of America, Wells Fargo, SunTrust, U.S. Bank. So lots of names you'll recognize.
What if I'm not a customer of one of those institutions? Can I still utilize the ITAC service?
Well, you can. We have a subscription service, something that you pay for. It's called ITAC Sentinel. And if you buy that service, you can use ITAC victim assistance anytime, as needed if you are a victim of identity theft.
Okay.
And the way this service works is you are referred to ITAC if you're a victim of identity theft, and we pull the consumer's credit report, what's called a tri-merge credit report. It means a report from all three big credit bureaus.
And those credit bureaus are?
It's Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion.
Okay.
And then we walk the consumer through that credit report, trade line by trade line, and say, do you recognize this? Is this your account? Was this you? And if we find suspicious activity, things that the consumer doesn't recognize, then we notify those companies and say, it appears that Ann's a victim of fraud, and then they have to investigate and resolve the problem.
Now, this takes place over the telephone.
Exactly.
With an education specialist, I assume, that
exactly.
is trained by the ITAC staff and knows how to do these things.
Oh yeah, it's a very specialized kind of knowledge. These are people who know the ins and outs of credit reports, and also are just trained to deal with the anxiety and the emotional turmoil that goes with identity theft. There's sometimes a sense that, oh well, it's not a violent crime, and so it's not as serious. Well, obviously it's not as serious as bodily harm, but there is a lot of emotional damage often associated.
Well, the harm that can be done down the road is staggering in some cases. I've heard of people that have lost their homes as a result of ID theft. I've heard of people that have been incarcerated because of people that committed crimes and in their name. And you get arrested for this, and you can spend days in jail before you can prove it's not you who did it. So yeah, I can imagine the emotional impact of that is great.
Well, fortunately, most cases are not like that. I mean, there are a few really, really bad cases, but even for, you know, the run-of-the-mill case, it's emotionally upsetting, and so it's really nice to talk to someone who knows what to do, can give you the, you know, the exact help that you need, and, you know, put your mind at ease.
Sure, makes sense to me. Once this has occurred and you're in the process and you're talking to an ITAC agent, I assume that this identity theft has some impact on credit scores. Does your organization help solve that problem or build my score back up?
Well, the way it works is that, yes, identity theft can affect your credit score because there may be an account that was opened and then it went into default. So the crook took out a loan, maybe even a home equity loan or something like that, didn't pay, and so you've got bad debt in your name.
Right.
Now, federal law does protect consumers in this situation, so you have the right to reverse that information, to explain the facts and get the creditor to investigate and change the information.
Does this have to be done in writing?
It does, and I can't say that it's always fast or painless, but you have a right under federal law for this to happen. So
Gotcha.
People just have to take a deep breath and say, yes, I know I'm going to have to write these letters,
So
and follow up.
I do see some value in dealing with an organization like ITAC, because frankly, I would not know even where to begin.
Exactly.
I know what the credit reporting agencies are, and I could contact them, but the letters and all the things that go with it. One last question, Ann. Is there a cost associated to the consumer that's working with ITAC in repairing the credit, repairing my reputation?
No, when you use ITAC Victim Assistance, it's free. That there's no cost to the consumer.
That's fantastic, and that's also true with your Sentinel program. Is that what you call
Well,
it?
if you buy Sentinel, Sentinel is a monthly subscription.
Okay.
But ITAC Victim Assistance is part of that package, so there's no extra charge to use ITAC Victim Assistance if you have the service.
Makes sense to me. Ann, thank you so much for being with us today. This was a fantastic interview. A lot of great information.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
It was great to be here.
That was a really good interview. I really enjoyed some of the things Ann had to say. What kind of stuck out in your mind?
She was great, and you know what? She really was able to give us some really important information about identity theft. It is a scary crime. Yes, it's not a violent crime, as she mentioned, but it's very real and can have some serious ramifications for you down the road.
It may not be violent, but it's pretty violent in terms of what happens to you. Some of the things she described, oh my gosh.
It's scary, and we don't want to think that there's somebody malicious out there trying to take advantage of you, but it's true. So we need to be aware. It's kind of the whole buyer beware. Are you checking your balances, your statements, and also checking your credit report maybe every couple of months or at least once a year for sure.
Do you remember that address that she mentioned?
Yeah, she said annualcreditreport.org. So make sure that you're going there to check it. I like the idea of doing it every 4 months. Check one bureau every 4 months so that you can be monitoring it throughout the year.
And it's free, correct?
It's free, which is great. I love stuff that's free.
Yeah, and another thing that she mentioned, that if your ID is stolen and you're part of the ITAC situation, that's also free.
It is free, but you know what? Be preventative. Don't be giving out your information on social networking sites to just anybody, letting a friend borrow your check or debit card and giving out that PIN number. Be very cautious of that
and
information.
Especially stay away from those open Wi-Fi accounts, huh?
Absolutely. Make sure that the information that you're putting online is at a secure website. You can go to a site that says HTTPS, for example, or it has the little lockbox in the bottom corner. Make sure that you're being aware of where you're going.
Makes sense to me. What's up next?
Up next, we have Budget Busters to be followed by the Stock Market Corner, so stay with us. Hi, welcome back. This week we're going to discuss the second most expensive budget item for most of us. At least it should be the second. Unfortunately for some, it's usually the most expensive, and I'm sure for very important reasons. What I'm talking about is your vehicle expense, namely your ride payment. Whatever kind of car you like, most of us will have a vehicle payment of some type. It's a small number indeed that actually decide to drive the same car they had in high school into the ground after college or securing your first job. The first major temptation you'll experience after getting that first job is going to be to buy or lease a brand new car. First, let's talk about the leasing idea. Bad idea most of the time. Why? Well, unless you're paying that payment with pre-tax dollars, it's just like renting a car for 3 years, 4 years, or even 5. Remember, you could owe more money for excess mileage or damage to the vehicle. You may make a monthly payment for a fixed period of time and then you just walk away with nothing at all to show for your effort. Now I agree that cars aren't an asset that appreciate, unless you have a Shelby Mustang or a 57 Chevy. But leasing something that you could buy and pay off over a period of time doesn't make any sense. By the way, if you have any questions about the pre-tax dollar comment, watch our Focus on the Future show every single week and you'll get your answer. So what kind of a vehicle should you buy and how much money should you spend? Well, if you have unlimited cash, well, that's great. Do whatever you want. But for many of us, this is a tough question to answer. How much you pay for a vehicle is going to depend on you and your circumstances. A good rule of thumb is to make sure that your monthly payment does not exceed 10% of your monthly take-home pay. This way, you're not married to your car. So if you make $3,000 take-home pay every month, you should be able to afford about a $300 per month payment without breaking your budget. You might consider buying a used, but new-to-you vehicle. Your money will go a lot further than buying a brand new vehicle, and you'll have an even nicer ride than if you had bought it brand new. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. Don't forget that you'll need to buy car insurance. Make sure you call your insurance agent to find out how much it's going to cost you to insure your vehicle before you sign the contract. It'd be a real bummer to spend more on car insurance than your car payment. Have fun buying that new car. Hi, welcome back to the Stock Market Corner. I'm Emily New.
And I'm Tom Crow.
How are you doing today, Tom?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm kind of excited to talk to you about what's been going on lately in the markets, and have we been seeing as much volatility, up, down, all around?
Volatility is still very high. It has come back quite a bit, and that's something we'll talk about in a little bit, is a volatility indicator that tells just how kind of much fear there is in the market, and it's called the VIX, the VIX. And it's something when we start talking about individual stocks in the markets, it's something you're going to want to pay attention to.
But overall, are we up?
Overall,
it seems like
we're
it's
up.
been a good week.
It has been a good week. We've come back off. We hit a little bit of a speed bump in the middle of the week. Did not come above a certain number that the technicians were looking for, so it's pulled back since then. It's kind of hanging right around that point. If it breaks out, it could go higher. I'm not really expecting it to. I think we're going to be stuck in a range for a while.
Who are the technicians that you're talking about?
They're the ones that just look at the math. All
Okay.
they look at is the numbers and historical performance. And what they see looking at the S&P for about the last 6 months is it's been kind of bouncing back and forth between a floor and a ceiling. Ceiling's about 1230, floor's about 1100 on the S&P. And it just seems to be, once it slips to the bottom part, enough buyers come in to support it. It gets to the top part, people start selling and taking profits. And I think we may be there for a while.
So is the S&P up right now then as well, or is it kind of on the down period? Okay.
It's right around that top.
So do you anticipate that it's going to be headed back down? Or?
Probably a little bit.
Okay.
I think it's going to slip a little bit. It's usually Friday going into the weekend when we got protesters running around the streets all over the country. We've got all kinds of stuff going on in Europe. People just don't want to be in the market over the weekend. So
do you think that that's affecting it? Those protesters,
it always
protesting
does.
Wall Street. Okay.
Anytime anything injects any emotion into the picture, the people will use as an excuse to buy or sell.
So that's what's happening domestically. What about internationally?
Internationally, we had Moody's come out with a bunch of downgrades. Several countries' debt was downgraded. Several of the large international banks were downgraded. Not so low that they're going to be in trouble, but it's going to cost them a few more points to buy and sell, to borrow money.
Is it going to have any sort of effect on us, or what about people traveling overseas? What do you think?
I'm not sure how it's going to affect exchange rates right now. The markets have also, we've seen gold go up with the markets this week, which is an indication that even if they have a solution over in Europe, people think the solution is to print more money. So they're looking for inflation, and the gold market has started to come back a little bit as well.
I'm always looking for ways to find a way to get to Europe cheap. So I'm always looking to see how I can get it over there cheaply.
Probably not going to affect any of our big banks too much here in this country, and I think our Treasury has pretty well limited their exposure to foreign debt. Some of our big international banks probably own some of that and may be impacted, but they're going to be diversified enough. It's not going to be a big killer for them.
Well, it's always interesting to see what's happening over there and how it plays with us. But let's talk about something exciting. We're bringing back our virtual stock market game, and I'll let you kind of introduce that.
Sure. We're going to bring back the stock portfolio. We're going to have 5 stocks, $5,000 a piece. And we're going to use a strategy. I know in the past you've done a 20-20, which was you buy the stock. If you're up 20%, you sell it. If you're down 20%, you sell it. And we're going to add one little twist to it, and that VIX that I talked about earlier. Right now, volatility is coming off of an almost historical high of 40. It's dropped all the way down to 30. If you look at it in terms of historical market averages, anything below 20 to 25 is typically a safer time and a less volatile period in the market. So when we're above 25, we're going to tighten that up to a 10-10 instead of a 20-20. If the VIX drops below 25, we'll change it real time to a 20-20, just because we don't want to put ourselves quite at so much risk to just be dragged up and down all over the place.
Well, I understand covering yourself with the risk, and what I like about this plan is that it takes all the emotion out of it, because I can already see me, and I see a lot of people are probably similar to how I am, is that you believe so strongly in a company or a product, and you're just diehard about it, but you have to have those parameters of the 20% on the high side and 20% on the low side, so you're protecting yourself, and you have to stick with it.
And we talked about that last year. If you come up with a strategy that works for you and you understand, you have to stick with it. It's when you start making exceptions to your rules that you're going to get clobbered.
Yeah, you have to stick with it. Well, what are the companies that you picked?
So, first one, we're going to start with Abercrombie & Fitch. The symbol's A and F. Today's open was $69.05, and that's the price we'll go in the portfolio at.
And that's per share of stock, right?
Per share of stock, and that is my favorite right now in the teen, young adult apparel sector. So I think we had good report today on consumer spending and a revision upwards for August. So back to school was a little stronger than people thought. And we're headed into the holiday shopping season. I know it's still a couple months away, but I think that whole sector is going to do well. And I think Abercrombie is a standout because it has some other brands attached to it, like Hollister, which is very popular.
Who else is attached to Abercrombie besides Hollister?
I honestly don't know.
Okay, we'll have to find that out for next week. Not a problem.
There are several other companies attached to them, and I will find out for you.
We'll let you know.
Next on the list is Atmel, which is a Silicon Valley semiconductor company. A lot of the interactive touchscreen electronics that go behind your cell phones, your iPads, a lot of that is theirs. It's an inexpensive tech stock, and technology right now is doing very well. That one's at $10.15 a share this morning for the open. The next one, we have one right up the street, Bed Bath & Beyond. In that kind of a retail sector, again, we had a lot of back to school, people outfitting their college dorm rooms.
Makes sense.
Again, going into the holiday season with their kitchen, bed, bath is going to do well. That should be a pretty strong one. $60.
And they're really the only ones doing it right now. They used to have competition
with linens and things, but that's gone away. So yeah, they're kind of the standalone, and they're poised to do pretty well. $60.70 at the open.
Okay.
The next one is kind of a discounter in that same apparel category as Kohl's Department Store, which is right across the street from us. $50.27 at the open. And the last one is my long shot, and I'm not even going to try to say the name because it's a Brazilian steel company. The symbol is SID, and it was $8.63 a share. It's a commodities play. It's a growth play in an emerging market because it's Brazil and Latin America.
What does commodities mean exactly?
That is stuff.
Okay.
In a nutshell, it's the gold, the silver, the copper, the oil, all your metals, precious and industrial, and even into your grains and cattle and other futures and that kind of thing. But this is particularly a steel play. They're manufactured steel products, and if you're looking at not even so much a global recovery, but increased spending in infrastructure, where they're going to start building bridges and roads. They're going to need all that rebar for the concrete. They're going to be buying steel like crazy. Also, Brazil is a strong emerging economy into which the U.S. exports quite a bit. We do a lot of business with Brazil. So if the U.S. is on a little bit of an uptick, the companies into which we outsource do even better.
That makes
Brazil,
sense.
India is the other one, but I didn't find any plays in India today. So we're going to stick with this Brazilian steel company, tremendously undervalued. I'll just tell you, it's got about a $30 price target, and we bought it at $8.63 this morning. So it could be a big one. It may not go anywhere, but it's one of those that could really be a home run for us.
But you said it's a long shot. Well, explain to me how exactly it is that this company out of Brazil, how are they traded on our markets?
They are traded directly on our market, which is nice.
Okay.
There's a lot of foreign companies trade as an ADR, which is an American Depository Receipt, which is a piece of paper that sits in a bank that says it represents a certain number of foreign shares. This one is traded directly on our market. You just buy SID just like you would anything else. Because
there's some things that I've looked at. I've looked around my house and looked at different products that I have, and I went to research them online, and I haven't found them in our markets because they're created overseas or they're not really headquartered here.
Right, good example of that one is Samsung, which is a great South Korean company. A lot of electronics are made by Samsung, but they are not traded in the U.S. markets.
Okay. Very interesting. Well, when you were doing research on these stocks and looking at all of the information, how do you determine who's good, who's bad, what's a good buy?
Right. We look at multiple factors, and we have proprietary screens that we've built here. But the underlying principle we always look for is strong fundamentals.
What's fundamentals?
Fundamentals is the business side numbers associated with a stock, as opposed to the technicals, which I said is just the pure numbers and the way they move. The business numbers are the earnings, the price to earnings ratio. Is it expensive or cheap compared to its competitors and compared to the rest of the market? Price to sales and price to free cash flow. You don't want stocks with big, huge numbers. When we saw back in 2000, when the NASDAQ took off and all the tech stocks went crazy and then crashed, they were trading, if they even had positive earnings, they were trading at price to earnings ratios of hundreds and even thousands, which meant the company was going to have to be in business for 1,000 years to make what you're paying for them right now, which is crazy. So we're looking for companies. I think the S&P's general price to earnings is around 13 or 14 right now. So if something is around that or less, and it's in the ballpark or lower than its competitors, like I said, I look at Abercrombie, I look at Aeropostale and the Gap and some others. And if they're competitive, then that's a good number. And all those things, the fundamentals that you're looking for on Yahoo Finance, you go to the main page for the stock on a summary quote, and then a little bit down the left-hand column, you'll see key statistics. And that'll give you all the ratios you could ever want to know, and it's all free and it's all there.
And it's all public. The companies don't hide this.
No,
are they allowed to hide it?
No.
Okay.
They are not.
So they have to tell you. Now, one quick question before we finish up is, you can't simply go by the price of the stock, right? Because we have a range here in our portfolio of something as inexpensive as $8 up to almost $70. So you can't go specifically on the price of the share, right?
No.
Okay.
It's pretty much irrelevant. That just is determined by the company and how many shares they decide to have out there.
Okay. Interesting stuff. It's going to be a really exciting semester as we follow these companies. So stick with us for next time, guys. We'll see you soon.
See you next time.
And now, here are this week's questions for classroom discussion. Number 1, what is ITAC and what does the organization do? Number 2, should you lease or buy a vehicle? And finally, does emotion drive the markets?